The night was cold and quiet, the kind of night where even the wind seemed hesitant to disturb the silence. Timothy Parker, a young, handsome entrepreneur known for his confidence and success, walked alone down a narrow street, his thoughts heavy after another long day of meetings and empty conversations. The city lights shimmered faintly on the wet pavement, and his polished shoes echoed softly with each step. He had everything money could buy: power, status, and respect. But lately, he had been haunted by something deeper, something missing, something no wealth could replace. As he turned a corner, he noticed a figure sitting by the wall of an old building. At first, he thought it was just another passerby resting. But as he got closer, he saw her. A young woman, shivering under the dim streetlight, one shoe off, clutching her ankle in pain. Her hair was loose, dark waves falling over her shoulders, and her face carried the kind of beauty that felt effortless, unpolished, almost fragile. She looked up suddenly, her eyes wide with fear. "Please, don't hurt me," she cried, her voice trembling. "I can't walk." Timothy froze, his heart tightening at her words. He raised his hands gently, his tone calm, his voice low and steady. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. "You're hurt. Let me help." The streetlight flickered above them, casting long shadows over the cracked pavement. For a moment, Olivia, for that was her name, hesitated. She didn't know this man, and his expensive suit and confident presence didn't exactly inspire trust. But something in his eyes, the sincerity, the quiet kindness, made her believe him just a little. She tried to move, but winced in pain. Timothy immediately stepped closer. "Don't," he said gently. "You've probably twisted your ankle." He crouched down, inspecting her foot carefully, noticing the swelling. "You need a doctor." She shook her head weakly. "I don't have money for that," she whispered. "I'll be fine. Just give me a moment." But Timothy didn't move away. "Please," he said softly, "let me help you. You don't have to worry about the cost." Her eyes filled with tears, not just from pain, but from exhaustion, fear, and something else. The fatigue of carrying too much alone for too long. She finally nodded. Timothy slipped off his coat and draped it around her shoulders. "We'll get you warm first," he murmured, helping her gently to her feet. She leaned on him, trembling, her small frame fitting easily against his side. The contact felt strange, unfamiliar, yet comforting. When they reached his car, Olivia hesitated again. "You don't even know me," she said softly. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her through the dim light of the dashboard, his expression unreadable but warm. "Because," he said quietly, "sometimes the right thing doesn't need a reason." Those words stayed in her heart as he drove her to the hospital. The night outside grew darker, but inside the car, a quiet warmth spread. The beginning of something neither of them could have predicted. Timothy glanced at her occasionally, noticing the way her eyes reflected both pride and vulnerability. She wasn't used to being helped. That much was clear. When they arrived, Timothy helped her out carefully, still holding her arm. The nurses recognized him immediately. Dr. Parker, the wealthy CEO of a medical startup, was well known around town for his donations to hospitals and charities. But tonight, he wasn't there as a benefactor. He was just a man trying to help a woman who had lost trust in the world. Olivia's ankle was indeed sprained, and as she rested in the hospital bed, she looked at Timothy sitting nearby, scrolling absently on his phone, waiting. "You don't have to stay," she said quietly. "You've already done enough." He looked up and smiled, that kind of genuine, easy smile that disarmed her completely. "I know," he said softly, "but I want to make sure you're okay." No one had ever said that to her before. Not like that. She wasn't used to kindness without expectation. When the nurse came in to say she could be discharged soon, Timothy stood. "I'll drive you home," he said without hesitation. Her first instinct was to refuse, but her foot still throbbed, and deep down, something in her heart told her this man wasn't like the others. "All right," she whispered. On the way to her apartment, silence filled the car, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that said more than words could. She told him her name, Olivia Bennett, and that she worked part-time at a bookstore while studying interior design. Her voice carried a soft humility, like someone who had learned to find beauty in simplicity. Timothy listened intently, fascinated. "You must love what you do," he said. She smiled faintly. "I do, even if it doesn't pay much." When they reached her building, a small old structure with peeling paint, she thanked him sincerely. "You didn't have to go this far," she said, holding his coat tightly. He looked at her for a long moment before responding. "You're right," he said gently, "but I'm glad I did." For a moment, neither of them moved. The city lights glimmered softly in the distance, and there was something about the way he looked at her, as if he was seeing her, really seeing her, that made her heart skip a beat. Then, almost awkwardly, she smiled and said, "Good night, Timothy." "Good night, Olivia," he replied, his voice low. As he drove away, he couldn't stop thinking about her. About her voice, her courage, the quiet strength in her eyes. He had met countless people in his life, powerful, confident, wealthy, but none had ever made him feel the way she did. Meanwhile, Olivia sat on her small bed, staring at the window. The pain in her ankle had eased, but her heart felt heavier than ever. Not with sadness, but with confusion. Who was that man? Really? Why had he cared so much? Somewhere between those questions and the beating of her heart, she whispered softly to herself, "He saved me." But what she didn't know was that, in a way she couldn't yet see, she had saved him too. That night, as both lay awake in their separate worlds, one surrounded by luxury, the other by modest simplicity, something invisible connected them. A thread of fate, fragile yet unbreakable, pulling two lonely souls closer than they could imagine. And though neither knew what the coming days would bring, one thing was certain: that encounter, on that quiet, dimly lit street, was only the beginning. The night Timothy found Olivia was the night both of their lives began to change forever. The morning sun rose lazily over the city skyline, painting the windows of tall buildings with streaks of gold. Timothy sat at the edge of his bed, staring absently at the coffee steaming in his hands. He hadn't slept much. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, Olivia, sitting under that dim streetlight, scared, hurt, and yet holding herself with quiet dignity. He didn't know why she lingered in his mind. He'd met hundreds of people in his life, clients, investors, socialites, people who smiled at him for what he could offer. But none had left an impression like she did. There was something raw, something real about her, and he couldn't shake it off. At the hospital, he stopped by the nurse's desk. "That woman from last night?" he asked softly. "Olivia Bennett. Do you have her contact information?" The nurse smiled knowingly. "You really can't stop thinking about her, can you?" Timothy chuckled, slightly embarrassed. "Maybe not. I'm afraid we can't share her details," the nurse replied politely. "Patient privacy." He nodded, understanding, but a hint of disappointment crossed his face. As he walked toward his office later that morning, he caught his reflection in the glass elevator. Tailored suit, expensive watch, flawless posture, and for the first time he wondered what all of it really meant. What good was success if every connection in his life felt empty? Meanwhile, in a quiet neighborhood across town, Olivia limped around her small apartment, trying to prepare for work. Her ankle was still sore, but she couldn't afford another missed day. Sophia, her elderly neighbor, had insisted she rest, but Olivia only smiled and said, "I've had worse days." As she tied her hair up, her eyes landed on the coat hanging over the chair. His coat. She ran her fingers along the fabric, remembering his voice. "Sometimes the right thing doesn't need a reason." The words echoed softly in her heart. She wanted to return it, of course, but she had no idea how to find him. Later that day, she was behind the counter at the bookstore, helping a little girl find a fairy tale when she looked up and froze. Timothy was standing by the entrance. He looked slightly out of place. Elegant suit, polished shoes, confident posture, in a place that smelled of old paper and dust. When his eyes found hers, a slow, genuine smile spread across his face. "Hi," he said softly. She blinked, surprised. "You, How did you? I may have asked around a little, he admitted with a sheepish grin. Hospitals don't talk, but small towns do. Her lips curved into an involuntary smile. You didn't have to come all this way. I wanted to, he said. I was hoping to make sure you were okay. I am, she replied, glancing down. Thanks to you. He noticed her ankle still slightly swollen beneath her jeans. You're limping, he said gently. Should you even be here? I need the job, she replied simply. Books don't sell themselves. He admired the quiet pride in her voice. She wasn't fragile. She was strong, resilient, the kind of person who built her life piece by piece, even when the world gave her nothing to start with. He hesitated for a moment, then asked, Would you let me take you to dinner sometime? Olivia's brows furrowed slightly. Dinner? Yes, he said, smiling. As a thank you for letting me help you. She laughed softly. I think you've got that backward. But after a pause, she said, All right, one dinner. That night, as they sat in a small restaurant near the river, the conversation flowed easily. He told her about his company, how he built it from scratch after losing his father at a young age. She told him about her dreams, finishing school, opening a small interior design studio one day. There was something refreshing about how she spoke. No pretense, no flattery, just truth. At one point, as she looked out the window, she said quietly, I used to believe people like you lived in a different world, a world where everything was easy. Timothy's smile faded a little. And now I think maybe, she said softly, everyone has something they're fighting. He looked at her for a long moment. You're right. By the time he dropped her home, neither of them wanted the night to end. He stood by his car, hands in his pockets, and said, Would you let me see you again? She smiled shyly. Maybe, depends, she teased lightly, on whether you keep showing up at my workplace uninvited. He laughed. Then I'll take that as a challenge. As he drove away, there was a quiet joy in his chest, something he hadn't felt in years. In the weeks that followed, Timothy found every excuse to see her again. Coffee near the bookstore, walks in the park, simple dinners that somehow always ended with laughter. Olivia's walls, built carefully over years of disappointment, began to crumble. And Timothy, the man who had everything but had always felt empty, began to feel whole again. But not everyone in his world saw it that way. His assistant, Lauren, noticed the change first. You've been distracted, she said one morning. Skipping meetings, spending time downtown. Who is she? Timothy smiled faintly. Someone worth the time. Lauren frowned. You know how people will talk, right? A CEO dating someone? Ordinary. He looked at her, calm but firm. Then let them talk. Across town, Olivia sat at her kitchen table, staring at a letter from her landlord. Rent was overdue again. Her heart sank, but she refused to tell Timothy. She didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want him to think she was with him for help. But what she didn't know was that Timothy already knew. He had quietly paid the rent without saying a word, not to show off, but because he couldn't bear to see her struggle. And when she found out, her pride flared. Why would you do that without asking me? She demanded one evening, her eyes flashing. He sighed, trying to explain. I just wanted to help. You and I. I didn't ask for your charity. She interrupted, tears welling in her eyes. You think because you have money you can fix everything. But not everything needs fixing. The silence that followed was sharp and painful. He stepped closer, voice low. I don't want to fix you, Olivia. I just care about you. Her anger faltered. She looked at him, seeing the sincerity, the vulnerability in his expression. After a long pause, she whispered, Then promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll see me for who I am, not for what I don't have. He nodded slowly. I promise. It was a simple promise, but it meant everything. That night, as they stood beneath the soft glow of a street lamp, the same kind of light where they first met, Timothy took her hand gently, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. Little did they know, their story was only beginning. Because love, as they were about to learn, doesn't always grow in comfort. It grows in the cracks, in the fragile spaces where two hearts learn to trust again. The night after Timothy had brought Olivia home lingered in his mind like an unfinished melody. He couldn't stop replaying her voice in his head, soft yet trembling, saying, "Thank you. I didn't mean to scream." It haunted him, not in a painful way, but in a way that stirred something deep inside, something that reminded him that even in his world of glass towers and gold watches, there were still moments that felt real. The next morning, Timothy drove back to her neighborhood. He didn't know why exactly. Maybe he wanted to make sure she was okay, or maybe he wanted to see her again, to look into those eyes that had once looked at him in fear and later in gratitude. He parked his sleek black car near the same street where he had found her, the place now bright with daylight but still echoing the quiet loneliness of that night. When he reached her building, he saw her sitting by the window of her small apartment, her foot bandaged, and a cup of tea in her hands. She looked peaceful, almost like she belonged to a different world. One slower, gentler, and far away from the one Timothy was used to. He hesitated for a moment before knocking softly on the door. Olivia opened it, surprised. "Timothy? What are you doing here?" He smiled, slightly embarrassed. I just wanted to check on you, see how your foot is doing." Her eyes softened. "It's much better, thanks to you. Please, come in." He stepped into her home, and immediately noticed how small but warm it felt. The scent of cinnamon and old books filled the air. There were sketches taped to the wall, drawings of cityscapes and faces, all made with a tender hand. "You draw?" he asked, walking closer. Olivia blushed. "Just as a hobby. I've always loved to paint, but I never really had the time or money to pursue it seriously." Timothy turned to her, curious. "You're really talented. These are beautiful." She laughed lightly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're just being kind." "I'm being honest," he said gently. "You have a gift." That was the first time Olivia truly smiled at him. A smile that reached her eyes, the kind that made Timothy's chest tighten. From that day on, Timothy began visiting more often. He brought groceries sometimes, or small things to help around the house. Olivia would make him tea, and they would talk for hours about everything. Her childhood in a small town, his pressure-filled life running a company he never asked to inherit, and their shared love for the simple things that success often made people forget. The contrast between their worlds was undeniable, but instead of pulling them apart, it drew them closer. Olivia reminded Timothy of what it meant to be human, to care, to listen, to feel. And Timothy showed Olivia that not all wealthy people were arrogant or distant. Some were simply lonely, trapped in lives that looked perfect from the outside. One rainy afternoon, they sat together by her window, watching the raindrops race down the glass. Olivia had her sketchbook open, drawing without looking at the page. "Why do you always look out the window when it rains?" Timothy asked softly. "Because," she said, smiling faintly, "the rain washes everything clean. It makes the city softer, quieter, and for a few moments, it feels like the world is listening." He looked at her, the curve of her lips, the light in her eyes, and realized he was falling for her. Not because of her beauty, though she had plenty of that, but because of her heart. Her kindness was effortless, her strength quiet. A few days later, Timothy invited her to dinner. "Nothing fancy," he promised. "Just a small place I like." She hesitated at first. "I don't have anything to wear to a place you'd go to." He smiled warmly. "Then I'll go wherever you want instead." They ended up at a cozy little restaurant near the river, the kind with soft lights and live music. Olivia wore a simple blue dress that matched her eyes, and Timothy couldn't take his eyes off her. They laughed, they shared stories, and for the first time in years, Timothy forgot about the weight of expectations that always followed him. After dinner, they walked along the water. The city lights shimmered in the reflection, and the air carried a faint chill. Olivia stopped, turning to him with that same gentle look she had given him the night he saved her. "Why are you being so kind to me, Timothy?" she asked quietly. "You don't even know me that well." He took a breath. Because when I look at you, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time. I feel peace. You remind me that there's more to life than business meetings and empty celebrations. Her eyes glistened in the dim light. And you remind me that kindness still exists in places I thought it didn't. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. That moment felt like time stopped. The city kept moving, cars passed by, the river flowed. But for them, everything was still. Two souls from opposite worlds, finding a bridge neither expected. When Timothy drove her home that night, neither wanted to say goodbye. She looked at him from the passenger seat, her heart beating fast, uncertain of what the future held but sure of one thing. She wasn't afraid of him anymore. She trusted him. And for Timothy, that trust meant more than anything he'd ever earned. As she stepped out of the car, she turned back and whispered, "Good night, Timothy." He smiled. "Good night, Olivia." But as she walked inside, he sat there for a moment, watching the lights in her window flicker on. A quiet smile spread across his face. He didn't know where this was going, but for the first time in a long while, he was willing to find out. Not as the rich man everyone expected him to be, but as someone real. Someone who had found light on the darkest street of his life. Someone who had found Olivia. And deep inside, Timothy felt it. This was only the beginning of something extraordinary. The next morning came with a fresh glow. Yet the light couldn't reach the weight in Timothy's chest. The city shone, glass towers gleaming in the distance. But inside his mind, shadows lingered. He had found something rare with Olivia, something real. And yet, something still held him back. He couldn't shake the fear that his world, built on appearances and power, would never mesh with hers, built on humility and hope. Olivia, meanwhile, moved through her days with a quiet grace. She walked through the bookstore where she worked, helping customers, ringing sales, stacking shelves. She felt the sting of glances. Wealthy people slipping coins into charity boxes, not into the hands of someone they knew. She tried not to think of it, tried not to let it hurt, but it always did. Because in Timothy's world, kindness was often hidden behind headlines and donations. In hers, it was lived quietly, often unseen. One evening, Timothy visited her unexpectedly. She looked up from the counter, surprised but pleased. He carried a small sketchbook he had found among her works, a drawing of the lonely streetlight from the night they met, the old building behind it, the shimmering puddle at the curb. He held it with reverence. "Is this yours?" he asked softly. She nodded, biting her lip. "I drew it the night you found me. I felt lost. And then you came." He flipped through the pages. Drawings of the bookstore front, the park where they walked, the river at night, the skyline from her balcony. "You're talented," he said. "More than I realized." She smiled a little sadly. "Thank you. I mean it." At that moment, his phone buzzed. He looked at it quickly, an urgent call from his business partner. Conflict, investors pulling out, rumors, a headline flooding the city. CEO seen with unknown woman. Is the empire at risk? Timothy's jaw clenched. He looked back at Olivia. "I have to go," he said quietly. "Work." She nodded, but the hurt was clear in her eyes. "I understand." He left, and she watched his car disappear into the night. For a long time, she sat there, her sketchbook in her lap, feeling the walls she had begun to lower, rise again. Days passed. Timothy attended board meetings where voices rose higher than stock numbers. "He's distracted," one executive said. "The business is suffering." Timothy forced a smile and nodded, but inside he was torn. He thought of Olivia's humble apartment, her laughter, her drawings. Then the boardroom, the champagne toasts, the endless ambition. Which world was his? Meanwhile, Olivia tried to keep normal. She missed their walks, their easy laughter, his presence beside her. But she wouldn't call him. Her pride, after all, had taught her to stand alone. And she wouldn't let himself think he'd rescued her only to watch her fade when his world demanded it. One evening, Timothy appeared at her doorstep. His suit was rumpled, his eyes tired but resolute. "Can we talk?" he asked. She let him in, her gaze steady. I thought work was calling you. It is, he said. But I realized, I don't want to choose between you and my empire. She searched his face. Then what do you want? He took a breath. I want to build a world where you don't feel like you're playing a part. I want a place where your sketches live on walls, not just in your apartment. And I want you by my side, if you'll let me. Tears filled her eyes. She stepped closer. Are you sure? He nodded. I've lost too many things chasing what others told me to want. I won't lose you. She smiled, the kind of smile that reached her soul. Then don't. And when their lips met, it wasn't about rescue. It was about promise. The kind made in quiet hearts, on uneven ground, when two people decide their worlds can be bigger together. From that night onward, Timothy walked into meetings with a new purpose. Not to win, but to create. And Olivia designed not just to pay rent, but to tell stories of healing, of chance encounters, of two strangers beneath a dim streetlight. Together, they discovered something simple and profound. Love doesn't fix everything, but love changes everything. For a few blissful weeks, everything felt perfect. Timothy and Olivia began to build a quiet rhythm together. Dinners in her small kitchen, long walks through the city after sunset, laughter that melted away the stress of his corporate life. Olivia's drawings started to fill the walls of his apartment, pieces of her world softly blending into his. But perfect things rarely come without their tests. One cold morning, as Olivia was preparing tea, Timothy's phone rang again. It was a call from his father, a man who had built the foundation of the company before Timothy took over. His tone was sharp, commanding, filled with the same authority Timothy had grown up under. Son, his father said, I've seen the articles. You're risking everything for that girl. Do you understand what this looks like to our investors? To our family? Timothy's jaw tightened. She's not just some girl, Dad. She's not one of us. His father interrupted. You've worked your whole life for this company, and now you're throwing it away over feelings. The world doesn't care about your emotions, Timothy. It cares about reputation. Those words hit deep, like they always had. Timothy had lived his entire life trying to prove he was more than a last name, more than wealth. But now, as he hung up the phone, he felt that same old pressure return. The weight of a family name that had always demanded perfection. Olivia, who had overheard part of the conversation, stood in the doorway, clutching her mug. He doesn't approve, does he? She asked softly. Timothy turned to her, his expression pained. He doesn't even know you. But no, he doesn't approve. Olivia smiled sadly. That's okay. He doesn't have to. You just have to know what you want. He walked over to her, taking her hands. I know what I want, he said. I want you. She searched his eyes for truth, and she found it. But she also saw the exhaustion, the silent battle he was fighting between love and legacy. Later that week, the company faced another hit. A deal fell through. The press blamed Timothy's distractions, and investors began to whisper about leadership changes. He found himself staying late in the office, drowning in reports, trying to fix what he feared was unraveling. Olivia noticed the distance creeping in. Texts went unanswered. Calls went to voicemail. The warm presence that had once felt constant now faded into silence. She understood he was under pressure, but the silence hurt nonetheless. One night, as the city rain poured down in silver sheets, she decided to go to his office. She walked into the gleaming lobby, water dripping from her umbrella, her heart heavy but hopeful. When she reached his office, she saw him through the glass, sitting across from his father and several executives. She could hear their raised voices. She's the reason you're losing focus, one of them said. You're a leader, not a hero in some love story. Timothy's father nodded. End this nonsense, son, before you lose everything. Olivia froze, the words piercing her chest. She stepped back, unnoticed, her breath shallow. For the first time since they met, she felt truly out of place, like an uninvited guest in a world that was never meant for her. She turned and left quietly, the sound of her footsteps drowned by the storm. That night, Timothy came home to find her apartment empty. Her sketches were gone, her laughter missing from the walls. On the kitchen table, there was only a note, written in her delicate handwriting. Timothy, you gave me hope when I had none. You showed me kindness when I expected pain. But I can't be the reason you lose what you've worked for. You belong to a world that's different from mine, and maybe that's okay. I'll always be grateful for what we shared. Love, Olivia. He stood there, frozen, reading the words again and again, as the rain continued to tap softly against the window. The sound of it echoed through the empty room, like a memory he couldn't hold on to. For the first time in years, Timothy broke down. Not because of failure, not because of loss, but because he realized what it meant to truly care. Days turned into weeks. The headlines shifted. The investors calmed. Life went on. But for Timothy, everything felt muted. The success he once celebrated meant nothing without her laughter beside him. Then, one evening, he went for a walk, back to that quiet street where they had first met. The same broken streetlight flickered. The same chill hung in the air. And as he stood there, lost in memory, he noticed something on the wall of the nearby building. It was a painting, a mural, Olivia's art. It showed a man kneeling beside a woman on a dark street, light pouring from above, the exact moment he had helped her that night. Beneath it were the words, "Sometimes love finds you when you least deserve it, and saves you when you don't even ask." He stepped closer, his chest tightening. Then he noticed a small signature in the corner. OL, she was here, somewhere. And in that moment, Timothy made a silent promise. He would find her, not as the man everyone expected him to be, but as the man she had helped him become. Because love, he now understood, wasn't about rescue. It was about return. Weeks passed, but Timothy couldn't shake the image of that mural. Every night, he returned to the same street, standing before the wall like it was a portal to a world he had lost. He would trace the edges of the painted figures with his fingers, remembering the warmth of Olivia's touch, the sound of her laughter, the way she made him feel human again. Then, one afternoon, fate decided to move once more. Timothy was driving through the art district of the city, a place he'd never really noticed before, when he saw a small crowd gathered outside a community center. On the walls, there were paintings, sketches, and murals, all signed with the same initials he had memorized. OL. He stopped the car immediately. As he stepped out, his heart began to race. The soft hum of chatter, the smell of fresh paint, it all felt unreal. He walked through the open courtyard, and there, among the canvases, stood Olivia. She was wearing a simple white dress, her hair loosely tied back, her hands stained with blue paint. And beside her, standing proudly with a paintbrush of her own, was a little girl who couldn't have been more than 7. A mirror of Olivia's smile and grace. Timothy froze. For a moment, all the noise around him vanished. It was as if time itself held its breath. When Olivia turned and saw him, her eyes widened. Not with fear, but with 1,000 emotions she had tried to bury. "Timothy," she whispered. He took a step forward, his voice unsteady. "I thought I'd lost you." She looked down, her hand trembling slightly. "You didn't lose me. I just needed to find myself again." He nodded, understanding every word without needing more. "I saw your mural. It was beautiful. You remembered. How could I forget?" she said softly. "That night changed everything. You changed everything." The little girl beside her, Sophie, tugged at her mother's dress. "Mommy, is this the man from your painting?" Olivia smiled, tears forming in her eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. He's the one." Sophie looked up at Timothy and grinned shyly. "Thank you for helping my mommy when she was hurt." Timothy knelt down, his heart swelling. "It was the easiest choice I ever made," he said gently. "And the best one." The day faded into evening, and Olivia invited him inside the small art studio she had built. The walls were covered in color, every shade of emotion, every whisper of healing. She had turned her pain into beauty, her struggle into something that gave others hope. "I wanted to help people the way you helped me," she said. "So I started teaching kids from the neighborhood. Art helps them dream again." Timothy smiled. You've built something incredible, Olivia. You've always had that power to bring life where there was none. She looked at him, her voice soft. And you? Did you find what you were looking for? He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded paper, her note worn from time and touch. No, he said, because what I was looking for was never something I could buy or fix. It was you. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sun dipped low, painting her studio in gold and rose. Then Olivia stepped closer, placing her hand over his heart. I was afraid, she admitted. Afraid I'd ruin your world. He shook his head slowly. You didn't ruin it. You saved it. Their eyes met, and for the first time in what felt like forever, everything was still. Then, softly, he pulled her into his arms. And as the world outside darkened, the light between them burned brighter than ever. Months later, a new mural appeared in the heart of the city. It showed a man and a woman standing beneath a streetlight, her hand in his, their faces lifted toward the sky. And beside them, a small girl with a paintbrush, painting stars above their heads. Beneath the image were the words, "Some love stories begin with pain, but end with peace." The mural became a quiet symbol of hope for those who passed by, for strangers, for dreamers, for anyone who had ever felt lost. And sometimes, late at night, if you walked past that same corner, you might see them, Timothy, Olivia, and little Sophie, laughing together, painting new colors over old walls. Because love, in its purest form, doesn't just heal what was broken. It rebuilds what was forgotten. And that night, beneath a streetlight that once flickered with fear, love stood tall, steady, unwavering, eternal.